And our program guest this morning, to pick up on at least one of those topics, will be the leader of the National Party, Warren Truss. But first we'll see what the Sunday papers are reporting. And before we do that, welcome back Mike Seckham.
Hello Barry, nice to be back.
You left this program about 7 years ago to go to the United States. A few things have changed since then.
A lot of things have changed. When I went, I thought John Howard was going to be in the lodge for the term of my natural life. And he wasn't. And when I arrived in the United States, it looked like a rich country. And I tell you what, coming back, Australia looks like the rich country. Yeah. I can't believe Australians are whinging about it, quite frankly.
All right, well, let's pick up on the major political topic in the papers this morning, and certainly in Tasmania, where they've decided to take the lead on gay marriages.
Yeah, I know. Who would have thunk it from Tasmania? Hey? It was traditionally, it was one of the more prejudiced against gay people, the states. But the new Lara Giddings has said that she wants to get it done by the end of the year. She told the Labor conference that she was determined, and it looks like they'll have the support to get it at least through the lower house of the state parliament. I'm not so sure about how they'll go in the upper house. But good for her, I would say. It makes Julia Gillard look a little more slow to act, I think, than she did before.
It's interesting that one or two of them are also framing it in an economic sense. They're saying that they'll open this up to all of Australia, and this could be a
gay marriage tourism,
big boost to the economy.
Pink wedding tourism, the pink-led recovery for Tasmania economy.
Well, let's hear what Lara Giddings, the Premier, did have to say to their conference, the ALP conference in Hobart yesterday.
We will be leading the way for the rest of Australia to follow. Just as there are nations across the world who have already taken this step, some of whom that you would not believe would have done this in advance of a nation like our own.
I believe that the community has reached that tipping point now where more people than not believe that this last form of discrimination should be removed.
So, Lenore, we talked about the parliamentary hurdle, the first one, but then there's the legal hurdle.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the first port of call for these laws is probably going to be the High Court. The Tasmanian government is acting on advice from constitutional lawyers like George Williams, who say that because the federal and the state governments have sort of side-by-side powers to make laws about marriage, and when John Howard amended the Marriage Act in 2004 to say marriage was between a man and a woman, he didn't explicitly say it wasn't between a man and a man or a woman and a woman, and therefore it's open to state governments to legislate otherwise. But I think that will almost inevitably be challenged in the High Court, and that will determine the fate of these laws if indeed they pass the Tasmanian Parliament in the first place.
And to Queensland now, Dennis Atkins, and the Premier Campbell Newman is making more cuts.
Yes, it's been a sort of a 4-month period of cuts and sackings up in Queensland. There doesn't really seem to have been much more happening since we got the LNP government in power. The latest one, according to Renee Villaris in the Sunday Mail today, is breast screening for cancer. Now, one of the policies of the LNP was to devolve all the health services back to a local level and to reinstitute hospital boards, which were a feature of the old National Party government more than 20 years ago. And one of these things that these hospital boards will be responsible for is cancer screening, for breast screening, bowel cancer, and so on. And a consequence of this will mean that Breast Screen Queensland, which is a centralised function that reminds women that it's time for their test and also coordinates the vans that go around and do community testing, with a budget of $44 million a year, they'll no longer cease to exist, and all of this will go down to the local level. Advocates of cancer screening are very worried about this. They say that some women will inevitably fall between the cracks. The health department says no, they won't. This will all be done at a local level.
Because it is just a different way of doing it.
It is a very different way of doing it, and there's quite an emotional statement from a breast cancer survivor in the Sunday Mail who said if it hadn't have been for that reminder letter she got from Breast Screen Queensland, then she would be dead. Now, I don't think that Campbell Newman's going to worry about it too much. He seems to sort of enjoy criticism. He sort of sucks it up. And I was amused to read in the Weekend Australian, Christine Jackman's done a profile of him, and she comes up with one fascinating fact, and that was that during the campaign his favourite song was Titanium. Now, I won't try and sing it, but...
please.
The lyrics... Take a leaf out of Wayne Swan's book, go on.
The lyrics are pretty telling. I'm criticised but all your bullets ricochet. You shoot me down, but I get up. I'm bulletproof, nothing to lose. Fire away, I am titanium.
Well, look, given that, what is the feeling in Queensland after 4 months? Because, as you said, there's been a lot of cuts to the public servants and so on.
Well, I think it's probably energised a pretty dispirited Labor base because they've got something to fight against now. But that Labor base is not only dispirited, it's also pretty small. The thing that struck me talking to people on the street around Brisbane is that they don't like some of the cuts, but the very next thing they say to you is, but gee, this really shows you what a mess Labor left this place in. So I think people were so convinced of the fact that Labor had botched up pretty well everything and were a completely incompetent government that they're cutting Campbell Newman an enormous amount of slack. It'll be interesting to see when we get some polling coming through. But at the moment, I think that he's getting in early to do the big cuts. It feels like he should be punished for it, but I think that there's still an enormous amount of goodwill there.
He's just doing what needs to be done.
Yep.
OK, well, that's the Sunday papers, and now we'll go straight to our program guest, the leader of the National Party, Warren Truss, who joins us this morning from Hervey Bay.